The Crithian Ascendancy's diplomatic shuttle glided into Orion Station like a shard of frozen starlight. Its crystalline hull refracted the amber glow of the station's docking lights, casting prismatic patterns across the faces of the human crew waiting on the observation deck. Inside, Ambassador Lyra Vosk adjusted the silver filaments woven through her hair, a mark of her rank among the Crithians, a species whose bodies shimmered with natural bioluminescence and whose bones grew crystalline ridges that glowed when emotions ran hot. To humans, they looked like walking constellations. To Lyra, humans looked soft, primitive, she muttered in her native tongue, watching through the viewport as a group of engineers in grease-stained jumpsuits scrambled to clear debris from the landing bay. One laughed loudly at a joke. The sound muffled through the shuttle's soundproofing. Lyra's nasal ridges twitched. No discipline. No elegance. Darian Cole leaned against a cargo crate in the station's bustling hangar, tuning out the clamor of engineers and traders. His scar itched, a phantom reminder of the pirate railgun blast that had nearly killed him 5 years ago. He'd left the military after that, trading structured warfare for the chaos of freelance salvage ops. But today's job was different. Babysitting crystal alien. He spotted the Crithian delegation the moment they entered. Ambassador Lyra moved like a blade, sharp, deliberate, her every step calculated to intimidate. Her gown, woven from metallic threads that shifted colors like oil on water, hissed against the floor. The Crithians behind her stared straight ahead, their glowing bone ridges pulsing faintly in the artificial light. "You the pilot?" Lyra's voice was colder than deep space. Darian saluted with a smirk. "Depends. You gonna call me primitive to my face or save that for your logs?" Her eyes narrowed. Close, her irises weren't solid colors but swirling galaxies of silver and cobalt. "Your reputation precedes you, Mr. Cole. Let's hope your piloting exceeds your aesthetic," he chuckled. Don't worry, Ambassador. I'll get your shiny rock back in one piece, even if I have to drag it through hell. True hell." Her aide, Kellen, a young Crithian with faint blue veins glowing beneath his opalescent skin, cleared his throat. "Ambassador, the humans have assigned us a pilot for the expedition." Lyra scanned the holographic dossier floating above Kellen's palm. A human male in his early 30s stared back, his face marred by a jagged scar running from his left eyebrow to his jawline. Unlike the clean-line uniforms of station personnel, his jacket hung open, revealing a faded shirt with a logo for something called a heavy metal. She flicked the file away. Experienced in what? Barbarian rituals? The artifact they sought, the Echo Shard, was no ordinary relic. For millennia, the Crithians had used it to amplify emotional resonance during diplomatic negotiations, believing raw feeling to be the ultimate language. But when civil war shattered their homeworld, the shard was lost, and the Crithians retreated into cold logic. Now, Lyra's faction hoped to reclaim it to heal their fractured society. "The shard's last known location is in the graveyard belt," Darian said, pulling up a star chart in the ship's cramped cockpit. The Starblade, his modified frigate, was all exposed wiring and patched hull plates, a stark contrast to Lyra's immaculate shuttle. Asteroid field full of old warships and pirate traps. Cozy. Lyra stiffened in the co-pilot's seat, her crystalline knuckles whitening. "We've detected residual energy signatures. The shard's presence causes emotional disturbances in nearby life forms. So it's a mood ring the size of a planet." "Got it." They'd barely cleared the station's defense grid when the pirates struck. 3 jagged fighters emerged from the shadow of a derelict freighter, their hulls painted with the crimson serpent sigil of the Red Maw cartel. "Evasive maneuvers," Lyra barked, her ridges flaring violet. "Crithian alarm." "You want to fly?" Darian snapped, slamming the throttle. The Starblade spiraled sideways, narrowly avoiding a torpedo. Alarms blared as the ship's AI calculated trajectories, but Darian overrode it, relying on instinct. "What are you doing?" Lyra gripped her seat, her composure cracking. "A pirates use predictive algorithms. Gotta be unpredictable." He threw the ship into a dead stop, cut the engines, and let momentum carry them backward. A Red Maw fighter overshot, colliding with its ally in a bloom of fire. Lyra stared at him, her ridges now flickering orange-red, a Crithian sign of adrenaline. "You fight like a wild animal." Darian grinned, sweat dripping down his scar. "Works, doesn't it?" By the time they escaped, the Starblade's hull was scorched, and Lyra's flawless demeanor had fissured. In the ship's dim medbay, she watched Darien stitch up a gash on his arm without anesthetic, his hands steady. "Why do you hide your pain?" she asked, her tone less icy than before. "A pain's just a reminder you're alive." He nodded at her glowing ridges. "You guys broadcast yours like a neon sign. Easy to exploit," she bristled. "We evolved beyond such weaknesses." "Yeah? Then why'd you lose the shard?" Silence hung between them, thick as nebula dust. Finally, Lyra said, "Our methods are reckless, but effective." Darien raised an eyebrow. Was that a compliment? An observation? But her ridges glowed softer now, blue-edged with gold. Curiosity. As they neared the graveyard belt, the scanners lit up with chaotic energy spikes. The Echo Shard's signal pulsed from a massive asteroid, its surface studded with the wreckage of ancient Crithian warships. "The shard's awake," Lyra whispered. "It feels us." Darien adjusted their course, his scar itching again. "Let's hope it likes visitors." But as they descended, the ship's systems began to glitch. Screens flickered with static, and a low hum vibrated through the hull, a sound that made Darien's teeth ache and Lyra's ridges flare violently. "Emotional feedback loop," she warned. "The shard amplifies what we feel. You need to calm down," Darien snorted. "Not my specialty." He killed the engines, letting the Starblade freefall toward the asteroid. "Hold on to something pretty." Lyra's reply was swallowed by the roar of atmospheric entry and the psychic scream of the shard tearing through their minds. The Starblade screamed through the asteroid's thin atmosphere, trailing smoke and sparks. Darien wrestled with the controls, muscles straining as the ship bucked like a wild animal. Beside him, Lyra's crystalline ridges blazed crimson, her hands clamped on the armrests. "Brace!" Darien shouted, yanking the throttle sideways. The ship clipped a jagged rock spire, shearing off a wing before skidding across the asteroid's surface in a shower of sparks. The hull groaned, metal screeching against crystalline bedrock until they lurched to a stop, half buried in glittering dust. Silence fell, broken only by the tick-tick of cooling metal. "Still think I'm reckless?" Darien coughed, blood trickling from a split lip. Lyra unclipped her harness, her voice steady but her ridges pulsing unevenly. "Reckless, no. Insane, undoubtedly." The asteroid's surface was a maze of towering crystal spires, their facets refracting starlight into fractured rainbows. But beneath their feet lay the true danger, a network of caves, their walls studded with bioluminescent growths that pulsed like living veins. The air hummed with a low, resonant frequency, vibrating in their bones. Lyra activated her wrist scanner, its blue hologram mapping the tunnels. "The shard signal originates 2 kilometers below us. These caves are unstable. Crithian records mention sound-reactive collapses." Darien kicked a pebble. It clinked against the ground, and the nearest crystals shivered, releasing a shower of glowing dust. "So no talking?" No loud talking," Lyra corrected, her ridges flickering with irritation. "Follow my path. Step where I step." "Yes, Ambassador," he mock saluted. The deeper they went, the more the caves came alive. Bioluminescent moss carpeted the floors, squishing underfoot like gelatin. Strange translucent insects flitted past, their wings chiming faintly. Every sound, a boot scuff, a breath, sent ripples through the crystals above. Lyra paused at a fork, her scanner glitching. "The shard's interference is disrupting sensors. We'll need to—" Darien crouched, pressing his palm to the ground. "Left tunnel. Feels steadier." Feels her voice drip with disdain. "We need data, not primitive intuition. Suit yourself." He vanished into the left passage. Lyra hesitated, then followed. The tunnel narrowed, forcing them to crawl. Lyra's robe snagged on jagged outcrops, her ridges flaring each time a crystal shard clattered to the floor. Ahead, Darien froze. "Don't move," he pointed. A hairline fracture split the ceiling above her, triggered by the scrape of her knee. Dust sifted down like glittering snow. "Back up slowly," he mouthed. She inched backward, but her boot slipped, dislodging a stone. The fracture split wider with a crack. Darien lunged, yanking her forward as the ceiling collapsed behind them. They tumbled into a cavern, gasping as tons of crystal buried the tunnel. "Data's great," he wheezed, "until it gets you crushed." Lyra's ridges dimmed. "Thank you." The cavern was a cathedral of light. Stalactites dripped from above, each droplet hitting pools below and ringing like bells. The sound built, echoing, until the walls trembled. "Run!" Darien grabbed her hand. They sprinted as the cave began to collapse, crystals shattering like glass. Lyra's logical mind faltered. Survival now depended on Darian's instinctive zigzagging, his scarred hand pulling her through gaps she'd have deemed impassable. A stalactite speared the ground where she'd stood moments before. When they stumbled into a stable chamber, Lyra's composure shattered. "Your methods are madness. You risked. We're alive, aren't we?" He grinned, sweat glistening on his scar. Her ridges flickered gold, reluctant admiration. The chamber's center held the echo shard. It floated above a pedestal, a spinning prism of raw emotion. The air around it warped, carrying whispers of joy, rage, and sorrow. Lyra approached, transfixed. "It's beautiful." Darian hung back, his scar burning. "Yeah, and hungry." The shard pulsed and the walls began to... The sound drilled into their minds, dragging up memories. Lyra's failure to save her sister in the war. Darian's crew dying in the pirate attack. Lyra gasped, her ridges blazing chaotic colors. "It feeds on pain." "Then stop feeding it," Darian roared, clapping his hands over her ears. "Focus on me." "My voice. My stupid face." She stared at him, her galaxy eyes wide. Slowly, the shard's pull lessened. They retreated, the shard's wail fading. In the tunnel, Lyra noticed Darian's scar glowing faintly. "Your wound. It reacted to the shard." He touched it, wary. "Old injury. Nothing more." But as they climbed toward the surface, the shard's song followed, a ghost in their minds. And far behind, in the darkness, something stirred. The storm outside the cave raged louder, its winds screaming like a chorus of tormented voices. Inside, the echo shard pulsed rhythmically, casting jagged shadows across Darian and Lyra's faces. The air tasted metallic, charged with raw emotion. "We need to leave," Lyra said, her voice strained. Her crystalline ridges flickered erratically, indigo fear, crimson urgency. "The shard's energy is destabilizing the asteroid's core." Darian stared at his scarred hands, still glowing faintly. "It's not just the asteroid. Something's alive down here." As if summoned, the ground trembled. A low, resonant growl echoed through the tunnels, shaking loose shards of crystal that sliced through the air like daggers. From the darkness emerged a creature, a towering amalgamation of jagged obsidian and glowing veins, its form shifting like smoke trapped in glass. The Guardian. Lyra's scanner shattered in her grip. "It's made of crystallized trauma." The shard's energy manifested it. "Great," Darian muttered, drawing his plasma pistol. "So we're fighting a ghost with anger issues." The Guardian moved faster than anything its size should. One moment, it loomed at the chamber's edge. The next, it was upon them, a clawed hand swiping at Lyra. Darian tackled her aside, the claw gouging a molten trench in the ground where she'd stood. "Stay behind me," he barked, firing at the creature's core. The plasma bolts dissolved harmlessly against its shifting form. Lyra's mind raced. "It's adapting. We need to disrupt its emotional frequency. English ambassador, make it feel something it can't control." The Guardian lunged again, its maw splitting into a scream that wasn't sound but memory. Darian's crew burning alive, Lyra's sister vanishing into artillery smoke. Both staggered, overwhelmed. Darian's scar flared white-hot. "Oh, you want to play dirty?" He grabbed Lyra's wrist. "Think of something happy." "Now? What?" Just do it." Lyra closed her eyes, grasping for a memory untainted by war. A rare moment, her sister teaching her to sculpt light into butterflies on their home moon. The memory glowed faintly in her mind, fragile but bright. Darian focused on his oldest memory, his mother humming a lullaby as she stitched his childhood Halloween costume. A rocket pilot, ironically. The scar on his face throbbed, but this time, warmth spread from it. The Guardian recoiled as if scalded. Its form rippled, cracks spreading where the light touched. "It's working," Lyra shouted. "But we can't hold this forever." Darian grinned savagely. "Then we go through it." They moved in sync, Lyra channeling fragile hope while Darian weaponized stubborn defiance. The Guardian lashed out, but every strike faltered when met with their combined resolve. In a desperate move, the creature split into fragments, smaller, faster copies that attacked from all sides. One shard sliced Darian's arm. Another grazed Lyra's cheek, drawing iridescent blood. "A plan B." Darian tossed Lyra his pistol. "Aim for the ceiling." She hesitated. "That will collapse the... Trust me," she fired. Crystals rained down, crushing half the Guardian's frag. Darian grabbed Lyra and leaped into the newly created crevice, landing in a lower chamber as the ceiling sealed above them. The chamber was pitch black save for the glow of their injuries. Lyra's cheeks shimmered like crushed opals. Darian's arm dripped crimson onto the crystalline floor. "You're bleeding," Lyra said quietly. "You're glowing," he countered. A strained laugh escaped her. "Acrithians don't glow. We radiate emotional states. Same difference." He tore a strip from his shirt, offering it for her wound. She declined, pressing a hand to her cheek. The light dimmed as her ridges softened to a weary teal. "Why did you save me? Back there you could have escaped alone." Darian leaned against the wall, his scars glow fading. "You're not the only one with a debt to pay." Before she could ask, the ground shook again. Deeper, hungrier. The wall before them crumbled, revealing a vast underground lake. At its center stood a massive crystal monolith, the true Echo Shard, dwarfing the fragment they'd recovered. Its surface swirled with trapped faces, their mouths frozen in silent screams. Lyra staggered. "This isn't a relic. It's a tomb. My ancestors. They didn't just lose the shard. They imprisoned their darkest emotions here." Darian's scar reignited burning blue. "And we just woke them up." The lake's surface rippled. Figures emerged. Skeletal Crithians fused with crystal, their hollow eyes fixed on the living. "Avoid take us," Lyra whispered. "They're the fallen, warriors consumed by the shard during the Civil War. The fallen raise rusted blades, their voices a discordant wail. Join us." The skeletal warriors advanced, their crystalline bones clattering like wind chimes in a hurricane. Lyra's ridges blazed violet, terror, but Darian stepped forward, his scar pulsing in sync with the monolithic shard. "Stay behind me," he growled, igniting a plasma torch from his belt. "You'll die," Lyra protested. "Not today." His grin was all teeth. The first fallen lunged. Darian sidestepped, slicing through its ribcage. The creature dissolved into ash, but 3 more took its place. Lyra snatched a shard of glowing crystal from the ground, her scientific mind racing. If their emotion given form, a Darian anger, they're drawn to it. "Stop fighting. Will you want me to hug them?" He ducked a rusted blade. "No, feel nothing," he snorted. "Easier said." A blade grazed his thigh. He hissed and the scar on his face flared brighter. Pain exploded behind Darian's eyes. Memory, a younger Darian unscarred, piloting a cargo ship, a Crithian distress signal, a derelict vessel, its crew slaughtered by pirates, a glowing shard fragment in the wreckage, small, jagged. He touches it, screams, fire, his face burning as the shard's energy sears his skin. He staggered. "I've seen this before. The shard, it was on my ship. 5 years ago." Lyra froze. "That's impossible. The shard was lost for centuries. Tell that to the pirates who melted their brains trying to steal it." His voice shook. Crashed the ship to contain it. My crew, they didn't make it." The fallen paused, their hollow eyes fixed on Darian's scar. The largest fallen stepped forward, its voice a gravelly echo. "You carry its mark. You're kin?" "Akin?" Lyra whispered. The fallen pointed a bony finger at Darian's scar. "The shard's rage lives in you. Join us, free it." Darian's torch flickered. Not a chance. "You fear your own heart," the fallen hissed. "Weaponize your pain. Rule it." Lyra gripped his arm. "They're right. The shard's energy is in you, but you've contained it for years. Use that." Darian stared at the monolithic shard. "How?" "Let go." The chamber trembled. Cracks spider-webbed across the ceiling. "The asteroid's breaking apart," Lyra warned. Darian closed his eyes. For the first time, he stopped fighting the scar's burn. Heat spread through his veins, not pain, but power. The fallen recoiled as light erupted from his body, searing through their shadowy forms. "Lyra! The monolith!" She sprinted to the shard, her fingers flying over its surface. "It's a neural lock. It needs a code." Try this." Darian slammed his glowing palm against the stone. The shard screamed. Lightning arced across the chamber. Visions flooded their minds. Crithian scientists desperate to end their civil war, trapping their collective trauma in the shard. A human smuggler centuries later, stealing a fragment. The shard's corruption spreading like a virus, birthing pirates, wars, Darian's scars. It's a chain reaction, Lyra realized. The shard doesn't amplify emotions. It infects them. The monolith cracked. The fallen disintegrated, their ashes swirling into the light. Darian collapsed, his scar now a lattice of glowing veins. The energy, it's too much! Lyra crouched beside him, then redirected. He grinned weakly. Got a planet to blow up? The asteroid's core imploded. Lyra half-dragged, half-carried Darian to the Starblade, its engines miraculously intact. They launched as the caverns collapsed behind them. the shard's light consuming everything. In orbit, Lyra bandaged Darian's arm. His scar had faded to a dull silver. Did the shard choose you? She asked quietly. I didn't. I chose it. He met her gaze. That day, I could have ejected the shard into space, but I thought, what if someone else finds it? So I crashed where nobody would look. Lyra's ridges softened to twilight blue. Grief. You carried that burden alone. Not anymore. Back on Orion Station, the fallout began. The shard's destruction sent psychic shockwaves through nearby systems. Crithian elders reported fading ridges, emotions becoming quieter, manageable. Humans described strange dreams of crystalline landscapes. Admiral Vance, the station's commander, glared at Darian's report. You destroyed a galactic heritage site. Saved your asses too. Lyra stepped forward. The shard was a weapon. We've given both our species a chance to heal. Properly, the Admiral sighed. Get out of my sight. The psychic shockwaves from the Echo Shard's destruction rippled across star systems, weaving threads of shared memory between humans and Crithians. On Orion Station, a Crithian engineer found herself humming a human folk song she'd never heard. In a distant human colony, a child drew precise geometric patterns, Crithian morning rites. Without knowing why, the galaxy was dreaming in each other's voices. Lyra stood at the observation deck, her ridges shimmering soft gold as she reviewed reports. The shared hallucinations have ceased, but the empathy remains. Your people are listening now. Darian leaned beside her, his silver-scarred cheek twitching. Yeah, and my bar's full of Crithians trying whiskey. It's chaos. With potential, she said, a smile from her progress. Darian's nightmares had changed. No longer flames and screams, but voices, Crithian and human, whispering regrets and hopes. He woke gasping, his scar glowing like a live wire. Lyra found him in the Starblade's engine bay, dismantling a thruster to keep his hands busy, or avoiding sleep.